On this Saturday night, attacks from the air and on the waters. Iran strikes Israel with drones and seizes a cargo ship near the Persian Gulf.
It's one of the most dangerous times between Israel and Iran in recent history.
As tensions soar between the two nations, Canadians are now being warned to avoid all travel to that region.
He was on the rampage. He was on the bloody rampage.
A man with a knife kills 6 people and injures 8, including a baby, at a Sydney shopping mall. Mid-air rescue mission. Dozens more finally touch ground after a fatal cable car crash in Turkey. And a long-awaited reward for some gold medal champions.
Global National with Farah Nasser. Reporting tonight, Tracy Tong.
Sirens and explosions over the old city of Jerusalem and across Israel tonight as a barrage of drones and missiles launched hours ago finally arrives, being intercepted by Israel's Iron Dome system, with U.S. Defense forces in the region also confirming they are shooting down drones as well. Whoever harms us, we will harm them, warned Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu earlier tonight. He says an offensive response to strike back at Iran is on the table. And tonight, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau also spoke about the attack, condemning Iran's actions.
Canada unequivocally condemns Iran's airborne attacks against Israel. We stand with Israel. The Iranian regime's latest actions will further destabilize the region and make lasting peace more difficult.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. Iran's permanent mission to the UN says the attack is a response to Israel's strike on an Iranian consulate in Syria, and that the matter can be deemed concluded, warning of further action if the Israeli regime makes another mistake. The barrage of missiles and drones follows days of threats by Iran's top officials, including its supreme leader, of a retaliatory strike against Israel that has left the country and the world on edge. There have also been reports of rockets being launched by Yemen and Lebanon. And earlier today, even before the drone attack, a group of Iranian military commandos stormed an Israeli-affiliated container ship near the Strait of Hormuz, seizing the ship. Mackenzie Gray has the latest in our top story.
It's set to be the first of many attacks from Iran. This cargo ship they allege is linked to Israel, seized by the Revolutionary Guard. And the Iranian drone attack, the U.S.'s warning, will likely unfold over several hours. Previously, an American official told CBS News Iran could potentially use more than 100 drones, 150 cruise missiles, and ballistic missiles for long-range military strikes inside Israel. Retaliation, nearly 2 weeks after a suspected Israeli bombing on an Iranian consulate in Syria, killed several top Iranian military officials, leading Iran's supreme leader to warn Israel will be punished.
The Israel Defense Forces prepared for all scenarios, and we will take the necessary steps, together with our allies, to protect the people of Israel.
Allies like the U.S. have warned Iran not to attack, but have rushed warships and other military assets to the region. President Joe Biden also rushed back to the White House this afternoon to consult with his national security team. The attack, a tactical mistake from Tehran in the eyes of NATO's former supreme commander.
You know, Iran has to feel like they're kind of winning right now. They've got the United States and Israel at odds. Hamas has survived. You've got the whole world down on the Israelis for what's going on in Gaza. This was part of the plan. This was the plan from the beginning.
The bigger concern, the possibility of any Iranian attack expanding the current Israel-Hamas war outside of Gaza.
If there's a significant mass casualty event inside Israel, then I think the possibility of escalation is very, very high.
Countries, including Canada, told their citizens not to travel to Israel because of a potential Iranian attack, Tracy. That looks like it's just started.
Mackenzie Gray in Ottawa for us. Thank you, Mackenzie. And there is a heightened state of alert not far from Israel's border in the neighboring West Bank. These images capturing what's being described by Palestinians as a rampage, apparently the largest since the war in Gaza began. Israeli settlers near Ramallah burning dozens of homes and cars in a number of small communities. It all started after a 14-year-old Israeli boy went missing. His body was found today. One Palestinian is dead in the skirmishes, 25 others injured. In Turkey, more than 180 people have now been rescued after a deadly cable car accident near the resort Mediterranean city of Antalya. A massive rescue operation was triggered Friday night after a cable car cabin collided with a broken pole, sending it crashing to the ground. One person was killed, 17 others injured, while dozens were left stranded. Officials say some 600 personnel took part in daring rescue efforts. A preliminary report suggests there was corrosion and damage to the cable car's rolling system. 13 people connected to the companies in charge of running and repairing the system have been detained. To Australia now, where at least 6 people are dead after a stabbing rampage inside a Sydney shopping mall. It happened at the Westfield shopping centre in Bondi Junction in the city's eastern suburbs. Police say the lone suspect had no clear motive or ideology and was eventually shot dead by a female officer, being hailed a hero. Catherine Urquhart reports on the indiscriminate attack and what more we know about the killer.
It was a chaotic scene inside Sydney's Westfield Bondi Junction shopping centre, where a mass stabbing happened just after 3 p.m.
I was running, but it was insane. It was insanity. I wasn't expecting it.
Terrified shoppers described the suspect as he walked through the mall.
We saw the guy come up the escalators, green shirt, I think shorts, with a big black knife in his hand. And just really calmly, he was just walking like he was having an ice cream in the park.
Video captured the moments a man confronted the 40-year-old attacker.
We saw all these people running towards us, and then we heard a shot.
That shot, fired by a female police officer, killed the suspect.
As she continued to walk quickly behind him to catch up with him, he turned, faced her, raised a knife. She discharged a firearm, and that person is now deceased.
There were desperate efforts to save victims. Among those killed, a mother whose 9-month-old baby was injured.
Baby in the stretcher going into the ambulance, and now I know it's a 9-month-old with a bandage of the arm and in the belly, and he was like not awake.
As first responders secured the crime scene and tended to victims, police said they didn't believe it was a terror attack.
We know a little bit about this person, but as I said, we're waiting to confirm his identification.
Australia's Prime Minister praised the heroics of everyday people who were there.
And yet for these Australians, their first instinct in the face of danger was to help someone else. That is what we hold on to tonight as Australians.
Almost all of the victims are women, but it's unclear if that's why they were targeted. A motive for the horrifying attack remains undetermined. Catherine Urquhart, Global News, Vancouver.
An Ontario man who suffered a medical emergency in Costa Rica says he feels stranded abroad. His family is working to bring him back. The challenge now, a lack of available beds here at home. Sean O'Shea reports.
For Emma Rice, the waiting game continues.
There really isn't much you can do other than advocate and be persistent.
The Toronto area woman's father, Grant, a 69-year-old from Eastern Ontario, lies in a hospital room in San Jose, Costa Rica. He's on a ventilator. Rice became seriously ill while traveling for the winter in the sunny south.
His recovery is going to be a bit of a long one.
But doctors and the insurance company say he's now fit to travel back to Canada aboard a medical evacuation flight. Rice has insurance coverage. For several days, there's been no Ontario hospital willing to accept him here, according to his daughter.
Yeah, it is disappointing.
His condition is a little better, says Emma, who flew from Canada to be at her dad's side.
I've been sleeping in his room with him, staying at the hospital.
When a Canadian is sick or injured outside the country, an expert told Global News hospitals tend to give beds to patients waiting for care in emergency rooms over Canadians away from home.
What's very disappointing is the lack of priority to getting Canadians back home that are overseas.
Lawyer Michael Korstein's family know this firsthand. An elderly family member was just flown back to Toronto this week from outside the country for brain surgery. It took longer than expected.
Someone's ill overseas, get them flown back, get them to a hospital. It shouldn't take more than a couple of days.
He can't speak. So it's hard for him to communicate. I don't know how someone would cope through this if you did not have anyone that could come be with you or advocate for you.
Canadians have faced these kinds of delays for years, but health experts say it's getting worse.
It should be addressed. It has to be addressed.
Ontario's Ministry of Health told us if a patient needs a critical care bed, one will be made available. But just when will that happen so that Rice can fly home? That's something the family would like to know. Tracy.
Sean O'Shea reporting in Toronto. Thanks, Sean. Well, multiple provinces across Canada are reporting elevated cases of deadly and invasive Strep A in 2024. A recent cluster in the Maritimes has families pushing for better awareness across the country in hopes of avoiding another record year like the one experienced in 2023. Heidi Petracek reports.
Oh, what? How did you do that?
Castell and Cameron almost died last year after developing invasive Group A streptococcus, or IGAS.
If I had hesitated one more day, my son wouldn't be here, and they said that.
Overnight, the 3-year-old's fever turned into sepsis and a month-long hospital stay.
He lost the ability to walk, so we had to reteach him how to walk.
The Public Health Agency of Canada says confirmed cases in 2023 have reached a new high at more than 5,200. And BC, Manitoba, Ontario, New Brunswick, and Nova Scotia are all reporting elevated numbers this year.
We thought she would get better and come home.
Sammy Ann Meta Ross's mother and stepfather died of the aggressive illness within hours of each other in a Nova Scotia hospital February 25th. They feel physicians didn't act quickly enough and there isn't enough awareness.
I don't think they realized how serious it was either. Not that they didn't do what they could for the knowledge that they had, but I just don't think the knowledge was out there enough.
Symptoms progress rapidly and include persistent high fever, severe pain, swelling and redness, a quickly spreading rash, dizziness and confusion, and nausea and or vomiting. Antibiotics can treat IGAS. Health officials stress deaths are rare, but in January, the BC Centre for Disease Control said invasive Group A strep killed 4 children. And IGAS killed 10 people in Nova Scotia the first 2 months of this year, including 6-year-old Jaden Davis.
The increase in kids is higher than the increase in adults.
Dr. Alison McGeer says it's largely unknown why some cases turn deadly, and best prevention would be a vaccine, if there was one.
It's been harder to make a vaccine, and we're not, I don't think, going to be able to solve this problem until we get vaccines for Group A strep.
If you're concerned, go to the hospital.
Advice from families and medical experts alike. The infection's rapidly progressing symptoms mean minutes count. Heidi Petracek, Global News, Halifax.
Iran's aggression against Israel. Coming up, the former Prime Minister of Israel on the potential response. Returning now to the crisis in the Middle East. The region is a tinderbox, and tonight's drone attacks could spiral out of control. Mercedes Stephenson spoke with former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett on what's at stake. She joins us now from Ottawa with more. Mercedes.
Tracy, the world is on edge regarding possible retaliation from Iran following Israel's attack on an Iranian consulate in Syria. Former Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett tells me on the West Block that Israel is prepared for what might come, but says that would be a mistake for Tehran.
Well, actually, it would be detrimental to Iran because Iran, until now, has enjoyed fighting a war, a one-sided war. So we're on a boxing ring, and one side is hitting the other, and the other is not responding, being Iran hitting Israel. If they directly attack Israel, clearly Israel will retaliate.
Bennett says the time may be coming for Israel to make the decision to hit Iranian territory.
You mentioned the head of the octopus being in Tehran, and obviously it's very rare to strike there directly. I am interested to know if you think that's what the Israeli government should be doing.
If we are attacked, and we are already being attacked by the proxies, I definitely think that that Iran should directly pay the price into Iran. I also think that the free world should engage in an ongoing soft campaign to collapse the Iranian regime.
Canada's shifting stance on the Israel-Hamas conflict is another topic we'll discuss in the interview, and it's something that Bennett didn't mince his words on.
I'm disappointed. I think Canada, taking a a negative stance both in terminology and the embargo and refunding UNRWA. We expect friends to be with us, not when it's easy, but when it's tough.
We'll also discuss the suffering in Gaza and international criticism of Israel's ongoing war on Hamas. And we'll bring in our expert panel to break down Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's testimony at the foreign interference inquiry this past week, as well as a look at the potential political fallout. Tracy?
Mercedes Stevenson in Ottawa for us. Thank you. And you can hear more from the former Israeli Prime Minister tomorrow morning on the West Block, right here on Global. Ahead, the urgent calls to help Indigenous communities brace for a busy wildfire season. Some Indigenous communities are sounding the alarm as the wildfire season gets underway. On Wednesday, the federal government announced new funding to help the 48 First Nations in Alberta hire emergency management coordinators. But with wildfires already sparking evacuation orders, several chiefs tell Global News that the announcement is both too little and too late. Heather Urquhart West reports.
It may be early April, but in north central Alberta, it's so dry that on Tuesday, a grass fire quickly got out of control. The blaze forced the evacuation of several homes on the Enoch Cree First Nation.
We experienced a brush fire that quickly escalated with the wind, and seeing that it's so dry out, and we are in a stage 4 drought as well. It's not helping anybody.
By the evening, residents were allowed to return home, but the early season scare is likely a sign of things to come. Forecasters are expecting another difficult season after a record-breaking year. Disproportionately impacted by wildfires, 2023 saw 161 fires threaten Indigenous communities. 90 First Nations faced evacuation orders.
First Nations are on the front lines of the climate disaster related to climate change, and nearly 80% of communities are at risk of effects due to wildfire.
It's why this week the federal government committed to fund emergency coordinator positions for every Alberta First Nation.
It's a great start, in my opinion, but it's a little too late after the fact. I think this should have been done initially last year instead of last minute.
Further to the north, the chief of the Athabasca Chipewyan First Nation agrees. Last May, the more than 800 people of Fort Chipewyan were forced from their homes. With no summer road access, the community had to be evacuated by air over 3 anxious days. Heading into another season, Chief Alan Adams says the community is still missing critical resources to protect homes from advancing flames. And its plan for a second evacuation route via the Athabasca River remains unfunded.
It's ironic that we have to endure the fire seasons that are coming before us without a proper plan in place, even though we went through this before.
A sense of deja vu and dread, with another hot and dry summer fast approaching. Heather Urquhart West, Global News, Calgary.
A little more than gold. Next, which Olympic event is now adding a cash prize to the top of the podium? Well, we are just months away from the Summer Olympics in Paris, when athletes from around the world will be vying for Olympic glory and gold. Usually, those are the only prizes any victorious Olympian would be walking away with. But one Olympic sport will soon be raising the stakes by putting money on the table. Mike Drolet explains the historic change.
For the first time in 128 years, the Olympic gold medal will be worth a little bit more, but only in track and field. Athletics president and two-time gold medalist Sebastian Coe argued it was long overdue to award athletes like marathon legend Eliud Kipchoge for growing their sport.
I don't run because of money, but I run because I want to perform. Then the other things will come later.
This year, that could be worth $50,000. The money, though, will come directly from the Athletics Federation, not the IOC, leaving it up to the federations of every other sport to decide if they want to follow suit.
I think what Coe did is a good thing for pushing this agenda and making this a discussion.
From the earliest days of the Olympics, the term amateur was considered sacrosanct. When it was discovered 1912 medalist Jim Thorpe was earning $25 a week playing minor league baseball, he was stripped of his medals. Any benefit from sport was deemed illegal.
It was, it was under the table if you got a prize, like a new chain or something like that, handlebars. And now you've got Timbits, shirts on 5-year-olds running around playing soccer and advertising for a corporation. And that, again, would have been completely unheard of.
The rules made life difficult for athletes like Angela Schneider, who, before winning silver at the 1984 Games, struggled to put food on her table and afford the equipment to compete.
I can't tell you how poor we were. I mean, I came from a farm. So the Rodney Legion paid for my Olympic ore. The town community rallied to pay for what was then brand new technology, the carbon fiber ore. I have that ore hanging in my home. They bought it for me so I could go to the Olympics.
The shift away from amateur happened in 1986, when the IOC removed the word from its charter to allow the U.S. Dream Team to compete. But that was almost 40 years ago. Some countries, including Canada, have since awarded cash prizes to its athletes. But the question now is, should all Olympic athletes, regardless of sport or country, get paid to compete? Mike Drolet, Global News, Toronto.
Well, that is Global National for this Saturday night. I'm Tracy Tong. Tonight's Your Canada is Brantford, Ontario. We love seeing Your Canada, so please keep emailing your photos to viewers at globalnational.com. Thanks for watching. Carolyn Jarvis will be at the anchor desk tomorrow. Have a great night.